Cody, you were right. You were right about the coronavirus and how much worse it's going to get.
Right?
Yeah, it's
Crazy.
you, I don't want to scare everybody, but it's something. It's John's stepdad's brother, I believe, is kind of high up, like almost CDC level, and they sent out a fairly scary email, and I believe the other health professionals are getting the same types of emails when it talks about estimates and death tolls and whatnot.
Yeah,
And it's pretty staggering. It's
it is.
man, people think it's going to be in the hundreds of thousands, and what they are saying, the experts are saying, is actually almost as much as the oh gosh, it wasn't the Spanish flu. I mean, that was obviously like 50,000. I believe there's like a Chinese flu, and it was 1.5 million.
Yeah.
By the time this is all said and done, and basically, it's what they were saying is our efforts to contain, like our efforts of containment, is futile. That whatever what they're trying to do right now is they're trying to lower the bell curve. If you guys all know what that means, which basically
Flatten the curve. Yeah.
flatten the curve. Yeah. So essentially not overloading the medical system, because if they do, then there's going to be a lot more deaths. So they're trying to containment really is a purpose to be able to have people go in the hospital in a more manageable
metered way.
manner.
Yeah.
So it's definitely. I think for most people it's going to be okay, but for people who are kind of health-wise brittle and weak, they have to be careful. So, but there are real economic implications to this. But do you have any other thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the economic implications are going to be way more widespread than most people are thinking. But like, I've been told, and I don't know how the truth of this, but I've been told that we're expecting a statewide quarantine coming next week in Washington.
Yes.
And so if that happens, I mean, like every business will be shut down, probably save grocery stores and banks, right? And everything will be skeleton crew, and there won't be anything on the shelves anyways at the grocery store, I'm sure. So, I mean, I've got friends that are traveling and they're trying to scramble to get back. Some are holding up where they're at, but it's gonna have a big impact. And as landlords, right, people that are investing in real estate, we have to think about this too, right? Is that going to impact our tenants' ability to pay? And what do we do, right? So I just having a conversation with another buddy of mine. It's about 10 doors, and we were talking about strategies to mitigate. And do you get out in front of it and have a conversation and say, if you're having a trouble, give me a call? Or if you do that, does that open up people to say, I'm having trouble, I'd like to not pay my rent today, right? So, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out.
Fortunately, it's March, so as well. I don't know how many of your investments are here, but at least for landlords out here, they're going to be stuck with their tenants until about March. But now everyone is okay. Hopefully, this doesn't happen again in November, because they could essentially, with the new laws, stay in their homes until March from November.
Yep.
So
yeah, and that's the crazy thing, is that it doesn't. So they say, and who knows? But like in a normal flu season, you see them come through the winter and then they dissipate. Germs dissipate during the summer months. It doesn't like the heat, apparently. But it won't go away. We have a southern hemisphere, and it will be winter there, so they're going to feel the impacts. And then when our winter comes back, does it come back with a vengeance, right? I've got a family member that's in healthcare too, and they're anticipating that everyone will know someone that died of the coronavirus. That's pretty big, right?
Well, what a great start to a meeting.
I know, right?
Anyway, let me go grab my bourbon, and we'll get started. So let's just get started. I want to be respectful of everybody's times, and I want to get through this presentation as quickly as possible. And Cody, I know we have some material, and if we can get through your presentation as well, I just want to make sure that we open up some time for Q&A and also for people who have to leave. And so, I'll just get right to it and kind of fly through this. So, there will be people joining in over time. So, let me see here. And people will be joining in via Zoom as well. So, there's that. All right. Oops. Present. All right. Can everybody... Well, so the question is, if somebody cannot see this, please let me know. Please voice it out now. But if not, I'll just continue.
I see ya.
Give it about 5 seconds. Okay. Perfect. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you guys spending your time. You guys, your times are very precious, and I want to be very respectful of it. Today we're going to be talking about real estate investing. In light of what has been happening here with the stock market and just the crazy fluctuations, I have been telling people for many, many years that I personally don't believe, not necessarily investing in the stock market, but I don't believe putting all of your eggs in that basket. A lot of people, like Dave Ramsey, for example, he believes in mutual funds, which is not a bad, it's not a bad strategy, but putting all of your money into mutual funds along with just your 401ks and whatnot, it's times like these that's really, it can be very sobering, because some people's portfolios, like what about the people who are retiring, right, in the next 5 years? And what if this market does not recover by then? Half of your portfolio, well, not half of it yet, but nearly at least 20% of your portfolio could be affected. And so that's why I've always believed in real estate investing, and the reason why I'm so big on this is because I've seen so many friends who have been able to retire through real estate, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So thank you for joining, and I'm excited to share with you guys some material. And I also have Cody here, and Cody's going to kind of introduce himself after my portion, but Cody really is just a really awesome guy. He's a great lender. He's one of the top lenders out here. If you guys have any lending needs, please reach out. What's really cool about Cody is he's super well known in the community for real estate investing, and so that's why I have him here, and I'm super excited to hear what he has to say as well. So anyway, the title is Win the Game Through Real Estate Investing. As you guys know, I'm Peter. For a lot of you guys, you guys already know I am in real estate, and I'm also a real estate investor, and I always, like, the reason why I'm so passionate about this is really because I want to help people get out of the rat race. I don't believe the system is really made for us to win unless you know how to play the game. So I just have a huge passion for that. So 92% of millennial millionaires in the U.S. are homeowners. Now there's a stat, it's an old stat because I believe Andrew Carnegie said this, but he said 90% of all millionaires become millionaires through real estate. And I don't know how accurate this data is, because I want to be accurate in my data. And at the same time, I do, just out of what I've seen so many of my friends who have become truly retired in their 30s because their net operating income, which means that all of their expenses are paid for, after they get their net operating income from their real estate. So that means that they have money set aside for their repairs. They have money set aside for their property managers, et cetera, and the net operating income really is that final number after debt service that they get. It's the free cash flow, and their free cash flow is so high that they can essentially stop working. And I know a lot of these guys are traveling 6 months at a time. It's actually a really beautiful life, and that's why I personally endorse it so hard. Please take notes. This is normally going to be in person, but please take notes if you can. So why do you have to be here today? So the corporate world was originally structured for you guys actually, when America was kind of beginning after the industrial age, the corporate system, it was actually meant for people to work in corporations for only until you're like 40s and your 50s. And once you're in that age bracket, you were supposed to have started your own business. That's what America was kind of founded upon. But nowadays, it's not like that anymore. A lot of people are working until their 40s and 50s and still working the corporate life. And what I'm finding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is a lot of people are extremely stressed out. They're pressured by their boss. I mean, work is really hard. And one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is that my dad used to make a lot of money. He used to bring home checks of $250,000. We made a lot of money, and unfortunately, even though he worked really hard and made a lot of money, he never really invested in real estate, and so he's had financial troubles as time went on. So that's one of the biggest lessons on why I'm so big into this. So I don't know if you guys know the cash flow quadrants, but if you haven't read Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad book, this is one of the most amazing concepts to learn. So essentially, there's 4 different quadrants, right? And you are in one of these quadrants. So there's the employee, the self-employed, the business owner, and the investor. The employee most of you guys are in this quadrant. Unfortunately, this is the quadrant. This is a side of the quadrant that has been affected the most, right? So when it comes to taxes, the system is not for you guys. These guys get hit the most. My friend Dan is going to be making pretty good money as a doctor, but he's also going to get like 40% of his paycheck taken out. And so, yeah, these guys are impacted the most. And also the small business owners are also impacted, especially because, the employee and the self-employed, they have to continue putting time in order to get money, right? And then you have the right side of the quadrant, the business owner, and then the investor. These guys are the ones who, they have bigger companies and they employ people. And then you have the investors who, for example, in real estate, they provide housing, right? And so the government tends to, they actually reward people who are in these quadrants because the business owner provides jobs, right? And then the investor, they provide housing. So these guys are the biggest winners in this game. And Cody, feel free to chime in at any time. Okay?
Yeah, you bet.
So, okay, real estate versus stock investing. I created this slide way before we had this a turbulent market, and I've been telling people to not put all of your eggs in one basket. Like, to be honest, guys, I'm not saying this to like gloat or anything, and I'm sorry for a lot of people whose portfolios have been affected, but I have been telling people not to invest too heavily into the stock market because of how quickly it could drop. I've just been doing a lot of research. And so after all my research, I realized real estate is definitely the best of the class. So anyway, the difference between real estate versus stock investing. Stock investing, it's passive, right? You don't really have to do anything. You just invest money. It's liquid. You could sell your stocks and have money pretty much right on your account, in your account. It's subject to economic conditions and also inflationary risks. Smaller capital requirement, you could buy a stock for like $20, right? Or even $1. It's easily bought and sold, and there's little to no commission. Nowadays, you really don't have commission, especially like E-Trade or Robinhood. We're all going into zero commission model. Real estate, it's active, right? You have to manage your properties, even if you have a manager. It's not as liquid. You can't sell it as quick. It requires a lot of research. It requires a larger capital requirement. Down payments, especially for investment properties, is at least 20%. It provides passive income. It has tax benefits, and then also can be sold, and you could do a 1031 exchange. So Real estate has outperformed the stock market approximately 2 to 1 since 2000, earning 10.71% annually versus 5.43% for stocks. With this sharp contrast in return on investment, many money seekers want to cash in and leverage real estate by acquiring rental properties. Generally, people buy real estate expecting it to significantly appreciate over time. In fact, it appreciates 3 to 4% per year on average nationally. However, investors not only benefit from the appreciation of the rental property, but it also receives 8 to 12% per year in return in their investment, just coming out from the income generated from renting out the property. So I want you guys to I mean, this is kind of the main concept, and I'm actually going to pass it over to Cody here soon. But essentially, if you were to die today, or if you were to retire, however you want to think of it, let's just say you put $1.5 million in your stock portfolio over time, or you were to put $1.5 million in rental real estate. Assuming that your family, you guys, at least here in Seattle, need about $100,000 to live every year, right? And that's still like, it's frugal, but let's just say 100,000 on stocks, right? So your family, let's just say the stock market didn't perform at all. Your family would basically run out in 15 years, right? Assuming there's no unforeseen consequences. Now, in real estate, let's just say you need 100,000 per year. Assuming that every single property that you buy, let's just say you bought a duplex in Spokane. So we've been looking in Spokane, and 300,000 is actually quite a lot of money out there. But let's just say you bought duplexes or fourplexes, and they're generating at the 1% rule. So I don't know if you guys know about the 1% rule, but it's just talking about how whatever the price of the house is, or the income generated from the house is hitting 1%. Per the price of the house. So $3,000 per house times 5, right? Because you can buy 5 homes with $1.5 million. That's $15,000 a month, minus expenses. So the general rule is about 35% to 40% for expenses, which ends up being about $9,000 a month. So and that's your net income, right? So your net income would end up being $9,000 times 12, right? 12 months is $108,000 a year. Now, keep in mind that your income, right? The income generating from real estate is offset by your tax write-offs, right? Because you could depreciate your home. So your $300,000 property appreciates at an average of 4%, meaning in 15 years, that one $300,000 property will end up being worth about $540,000. And then you can have 5, if you have 5 of them, that's a total of $2.7 million. So you're still able to provide for your family for the next 15 years or however long, I mean, basically the rest of your life. And you will also have a net worth of about $2.7 million, assuming the $1.5 million model. So if ever they want to sell, right? So let's just say you want to sell any of these properties. The beauty is, at least until 1031 exchanges actually exist, you can also 1031 exchange. You can sell your property and not have any capital gains, because then you can put it into like let's just say a mobile home park, or you bought a storage facility, right? So even that is, there's benefits in that. So I'm just gonna, you guys all know what residual income is, right? Passive income. Don't have to go through that. So the amount you are paid is directly correlated to the amount of value you bring to the marketplace, right? I believe in that. So there's different ways. So I don't know if you guys can see everybody in this group, but all of us, we could be partners, right? There's some people with cash. I know people who don't have credit. I know people who don't have cash. I know people who don't have both, but they have the knowledge, right? Every single point, you have to look at every single one of these and up your game in each and every one of these categories. And let's just say you had the credit, then I'm happy to connect you with a guy with the cash, and you guys can make a great deal happen, right? So I'm going to go through each and every one of these. So cash, how much money do you have allocated for real estate? Are you budgeting? Do you have an emergency fund? If you don't have an emergency fund, you shouldn't even be looking at real estate. You need, especially in times like these, you have to have at least 6 months of emergency funds, right? And then credit. What does your credit situation look like? It does matter, right? So if you have bad credit, start repairing it, because it will make a difference when you are, and Cody will tell you more, when you're getting financing. Knowledge. How much real estate knowledge do you have? Real estate knowledge is huge, because you could find a deal that's $150,000 in equity value, and you're bringing a lot of value to the table because you got this deal at $150,000 discount because of your knowledge, right? So, be prepared financially. Have a budget. Have emergency funds. Have cash that's designated to real estate. This is my personal budget. Yes, I budget every single penny. I just use a Google Doc, and this really helps in terms of my just the efficacy of my budgeting. Also, I have I would say almost 20 accounts at various banks right now. And I basically, Tom Ferry taught me this, where every single paycheck that comes in, I immediately have like a 529, or I don't have a 529B, but for people who want to put their kids to school, they have a 529B. They have retirement accounts. They have a cash account. They have a fund account. They also have a tax account. So I would suggest, to actually create these different accounts and funnel every paycheck into these various accounts. Credit score, right? How does your online financial dating profile look like? Make sure that you have good credit. It actually does make a difference in this 21st century. And then knowledge, you have to understand how a basic real estate transaction works. Learn how to calculate a good real estate investment and understand the risks of real estate investing. So, and sorry I'm going fast. I want to be real quick. How do you find a deal? You can look at Craigslist, Redfin. There's a lot of wholesalers. So these are emails from wholesalers. I would get on every wholesaler list known to man. And if you need any recommendations, I'm happy to forward you some wholesalers. Okay. Know how to analyze a deal. Originally, I was actually going to do an analysis, but for time's sake, this is the calculator that I use, and I want to share this with you guys. So please email me, and I'll share this calculator with you guys. And this is coming from this book called Flip, which is one of the best books for real estate investing for flip properties. How do you analyze a deal? How do you do a comparable market analysis? Hold. How do you analyze a hold deal? Right. So I've read this book. I love this book. It's like the Bible of real estate holding. And there's a lot of different formulas. You can see your net rental income and your net cash flow. So I'll send you guys this as well if you guys have any questions about it. So looking at rent comparables, how do you structure a deal? So this is also a part of knowledge. So this is the mobile home park that I ended up purchasing, and this is at least what he said. It's actually a little bit less, to be honest, but hey, I just bought a mobile home park that generates $141,000 a year. Right, that's the net operating income. We're actually going to get to these numbers, if not more, because we're adding about 5 pads. So I'm generating $120,000 a year. That's $10,000 every single month just through one mobile home park, and it's a mobile home park, right? So I hope this opens your eyes, right? And if you get 4 or 5 of these, you're done. Like, you don't ever have to work again, right? Monopoly, I just want to share this with you guys because everybody's basically playing this. Not everybody, but there are a few people who are playing this game who are making a lot of money. People have houses here, and people are walking by it, and they are just generating money, right? And over time, these guys are really the biggest winners. So educate yourself. If you guys aren't on Bigger Pockets, sign up for Bigger Pockets. Also, subscribe to YouTube channels like Graham Stefan. I like that guy. I listen to the Rich Dad Poor Dad podcast as well. So start with residual income. I'm just going to move on. I want to have Cody start here. So Cody, I'm going to I'm going to exit this, and then I'll let you. I don't know how to exit this. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to let you get going.
Well, if you want to just keep rolling on that too, that I think you put my show into yours, right?
Oh, I could, and then you just tell me when to switch it?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, no problem.
Although I can't see it super well.
Oh, you can't?
No, that's fine. When you go back to that screen, yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, yeah, if you can pull it up as well on your screen and then, just follow along, but I will let you go.
Yeah, go ahead. All right, cool. Well, thanks, Peter. Well, hi, everybody. Again, my name is Cody Touche. I work at Caliber Home Loans. I've just crested into my 20th year in the mortgage world, so it's been quite a ride, and this last couple of weeks has been the highest peaks and lowest valleys of that as well. So it's been kind of a crazy spin the last couple of weeks. I currently own about 80 doors. I'm in actually that's moved around a little bit since I put this. I sold a sixplex, and now I've got a contract on a 42 unit building in now just outside of Nashville that we just went and did an inspection on.
Good move.
So we'll be probably up over about 120. Around 120 doors by the end of, I would imagine, in April, provided that coronavirus doesn't shut everything down. I've done more passive investments in 3 different syndications, totaling almost 1,000 units. I've done a bunch of flips as well. That's kind of how I got started doing this. The most recent one was a $1.1 million deal in Lake Forest Park, and I've got a new one going in Silver Firs right now. Personally, I've done a number of 1031 exchanges, moving from properties I've bought around the Puget Sound area and moving those into bigger properties, whether they be Puget Sound or out of state. I've bought several properties personally at foreclosure and helped a lot of our clients buy at foreclosure. It's not a big part of what we do anymore because there's just not many deals available there. It's moved more to the off-market and wholesale deals that Peter were talking about. I've also bought and sold several assignment deals as well. That can be just like kind of like a wholesale deal, but maybe a little different. The last one I did was in Spokane, where we did a wrap to the mortgage, so we didn't actually have to go get financing on it. I just basically took over the financing of the prior owner. So for somebody that doesn't have credit or a lot of cash to work with, that could be a great way to pick up properties as well. So I've done in and out of state, and I've done just a ton of BRRRRs. If you're not familiar with BRRRR, that just stands for buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and the last R is our repeat. And the idea is to be able to recycle your capital. We were doing that before the clever guys at Bigger Pockets coined the term. We used to call it flip and hold instead of just flip. So so kind of been a fun adventure of the last 20 years or so. Go ahead and move it along, Peter. This is kind of my span my career in the mortgage world. I started in 2000. 2006, there's a market crash. Obviously, that happened and it impacted things. Throughout that window, 2006 to 2008, things were pretty rough in just generic business development for mortgage world. So we weren't doing a whole lot of loans. So we had to find something to kind of fill the gap. And so in 2008, there was a lot of opportunity to buy at foreclosure auction, off-market distressed properties. Through 2011 really is when the market ended up bottoming out. There were still some deals to be had there, but we were evaluating properties at that point in time. And then by that window of time, everybody was watching Flip This House and HGTV, and everybody thought they were a flipper at that point in time. So the competition got really tough at the marketplace. So we started having thinner and thinner margins until we got to the point where properties just weren't making sense to flip, but they did make sense to hold because rents were still pretty high and prices were still relatively low. You just couldn't make much margin. But now with the kind of the boom from 2011 forward, housing prices here in Washington have become unaffordable to the point where it's very difficult to make that 1% rule Peter was mentioning earlier. And so I've kind of started looking at outside markets to move some of the funds of the buildings that I bought here. I think you can still buy here. You just have to be very choosy. I picked up a fourplex in Auburn last year, towards the end of last year. It was probably a 0.8% rule, so not quite a 1% rule, but I was willing to take a hit on the rent because of the area that it was in and how I felt like it would appraise. So that takes us to 2020, and now, man, I tell you, after the last 2 weeks, all bets are off. It's tough, going to be tough to say where we go from here. But that said, you look at real estate, you look at the history, generally speaking, it just keeps going up, right? And I think as long as we have population growth, people need housing, it's going to be one of the safest places to keep your money, and from a long-term perspective. Go ahead, Peter.
Hey, Cody, sorry to interrupt, but we aren't able to see your slide because we switched the screen back to you.
Oh, okay.
Back. Oh.
Peter, yeah, go ahead and switch it to you.
What?
As you speak, the screen switches back to you. So.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So one hack for people on the call: if you click on Peter's screen at the
Exactly.
bottom of the door, then you'll be able to stay with the slides as Cody speaks.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, people are texting me. Thank you guys for helping.
Yeah, there you go. So keep on Peter. You don't need to look at me anyways. You just want to see Peter's slide. So yeah. All right. So like I said earlier, I started flipping to basically make money, right? To keep up with my bills because the mortgage world had softened, and I really enjoyed it. I liked doing it, and then all of a sudden the mortgage world got busy again, and so I started holding more. So there's a couple different ways that you can do this, and it depends on what's right for you, right? No, there's no one size fits all. I started flipping because I wanted to make money. And then I started doing the fix and hold strategy because I like to renovate and I like to make something better than it was when I got it. But I've got a number of clients and a couple of buddies that love to buy turnkey. So turnkey basically means that someone else has already done that work. They've already bought the property, they've flipped it, they've got a tenant in there, and now they're looking to sell it. In that kind of case, you're probably going to pay top dollar for that property. But if you're a busy professional, we've got clients that are 60, 70, 80-hour a week doctors and attorneys, and they just don't have the time to manage a flip or a burr. So they've got enough cash and they can stack up cash quickly. So they'd rather buy a turnkey property that's going to still put them into real estate, still bring them cash flow, but they don't have to worry about doing all that work. A lot of our clients that are general contractors or super handy or have great eye for design, they'll do a live-in flip. And a live-in flip can be a great way to build capital. If you're looking at that sort of thing, you can take advantage of the tax code. And as a single person, you can do a live-in flip, sell every 2 years and make $250,000 in gains and pay no taxes. If you're married, you can double that, make $500,000. So I've got clients that's basically now all they're doing is they're living off of their live-in flips. So they've done it a number of times. They've built up some cash and they don't have JOBs anymore, right? They don't have to show up to work. And they buy great properties that need love, live in them for a couple of years, sell them and make $300,000-400,000, and that's their income for the next couple of years while they do the next one. So, and if that starts to fail, then they'll go back and get jobs, but they love it. They love doing what they're doing. So again, that BRRRR strategy, just so you can see it in print, is buy, renovate, rent, refi, and repeat. And recently I've added a new R to this. I might call the bigger pockets, guys. You put another R on the end of that, and the last one will be retire, right? This is by far the best game plan, I think, to use the limited amount of funds that most of us have to be able to continue to build a rental real estate portfolio. And the idea is that you're going to buy it at a discount. You're going to renovate it with great renovations that are not over budget, not the way that you'd maybe renovate them to live in them, but what are great for tenants, right? And then you get them rented up, you get them refinanced, and then you move on and do it again and again. Two strategies that we use for this, some folks that have a big nest egg or a big HELOC on their property, they can use their own cash. That's totally fine. A great way to get this done, though, is to use hard money. And so what hard money is basically is just private capital. It's relatively expensive money, but they don't care about building condition. So you're not going to have to meet Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac guidelines or appraisal guidelines. They're a lot faster, so you can be nearly a cash buyer, right? You can close on a hard money loan in a week if you had to. The point of that, though, is that we get very creative about how we use our hard money lenders in the sense that we can have them build in the cash for the fix-up. We can do what's called a cash security deposit as well. So effectively, we can get 100% financing on paper with hard money, even though we've given them a cash security deposit for their basically down payment, like hold. But what they do is when they write that loan at 100% of acquisition and renovation, then when you go to refinance it through a standard method, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, hopefully through me, then we can refinance that, pay back the entire hard money loan. And if you've done a great job on the flip and you did it, or on the renovation, and you've done a great job on the buy, we create enough value in that property to be able to refinance and pay off the entire hard money loan. And now that cash security deposit they took in the beginning isn't needed anymore, and it becomes refunded back to you. So that can be a great way to recycle capital. And oftentimes most folks have some questions on that. Peter, do you want to hold questions till the end, or do you want to answer them now?
Yeah, I'm tempted to have people ask questions because this is such an important method.
Sure.
If anyone has a dying question, then please feel free to ask. But I'd like to hold the questions until the end. So I'll give it.
No problem. Yeah, if you've got them, just write them down. We can come back to them for sure.
Cool. Okay.
Cool. So then one other way to do the burst out method is not as attractive because it's harder to get your money back. But you can utilize a Fannie Mae renovation loan. Those are great for owner-occupied, like live-in flips, because you're going to maybe just hang out there for a while. If you're truly doing a BRRRR and you want to get your capital recycling fast, then that's not going to be a great way to go. I'd probably stick with the hard money.
Okay.
All right. So flip versus hold, right? This is when we have to think about, like, does this make sense to buy or flip and sell it, or does it make sense to hold it? And this was my own personal example. Is I had a property that was supposed to be a flip, and it was in Marysville, and it just didn't work out. I was going to make around 12 or 15 grand on it, and it cash flowed $500 a month instead. So I did the math, and I thought, hey, I don't need that cash right now, right? I didn't have to sell it and extract that 12 grand, but I sure was really interested in $6,000 a year, right? So that made me do the break-even calculation like I do for a lot of our clients when we're talking about buying points or putting more money down, like how quick does it break even? And so in this case, it was a no-brainer, right? It broke even in a couple of years. I've got all my money back. I still own the asset. Now, in the end, I ended up selling that property beginning of last year and bought an 18-unit apartment building in Oklahoma. That was a property I paid $175,000 for, put about 10, 15 into it. I probably left a total of about 40 grand into that property, and I turned it into a $1 million building in Oklahoma like 5 years later. So the power of buying something great, letting it vest a little bit, letting the market lift it up, and then doing that 1031 exchange is just monster. So again, flip example, if you can net out $100,000 from a property that's going to make you $500 a month, it's going to take forever to get your cash back. You probably just sell it and move on. Right? That's great money you can go do another deal with. In my example is about 12 to 15 grand in positive net flip income versus $500 a month, 2.5 years. It makes sense to hold on to it long term. Okay, go ahead, Peter. So net operating income, Peter had mentioned that before. That's a great way, and you're going to see that. You're going to see some of these things on rental listings, and so we like to give you a little explanation of what those look like. Net operating income is all the income minus all the expenses, but non-mortgage. Okay, so they don't take into consideration the financing costs on net operating income. It's a way that realtors and folks and wholesalers are able to help someone compare a property against another property without regards to the financing. And as an investor, it allows you to just look at the rate of return based on net operating income and not have to worry about financing. So that it's not for any of us that are using financing, it's not the end all be all, right? But it's a way to kind of allow properties to be evaluated against each other without having to dig too deep into the numbers. Cap rate is just the capitalization rate. So in effect, that's the net operating income divided by the price of the home or the building would give you your cap rate. And that's a very important equation to understand, because that's how we can force appreciation or force extra value. Because if you know the cap rate in an area and you can improve the net operating income, the other side of that equation is value. And so if we always want to, as buyers, we want to buy as low as we possibly can, which means we want to buy at the highest possible cap rate. right? I want to buy at a 9% cap rate. But when I sell or when I evaluate to a bank, I want to use a 5% cap rate because it means my value is much greater. And so in the middle there is the net operating income. And that's what, as investors, we can affect. You're not going to probably affect the cap rate in an area. And you're not going to specifically impact the value of the property. But how you can impact the value of the property is by moving the net operating income. So you either increase income or you reduce expenses. So Peter, on your mobile home park, adding 5 pads is going to add income. And adding that income is going to add value, right? So Peter's able to add. I mean, and I don't know how the numbers shake out, but let's say those 5 new spots bring in $500 a month, Peter.
No, they would be about 800.
800 each.
Yeah.
Boom shakalaka. 800. That's $4,000 per month times 12. That's $48,000.
Yep.
Peter, what's the cap rate in that area?
So right now it's currently running at a 12% cap rate. Which,
but if you were going to sell it, what would you sell it at?
I'd probably sell it at an 8% cap rate.
Okay. So if you could sell it at an 8% cap rate, adding those 2 pads or those 5 pads, increases the value at an 8% cap rate at $600,000. That's pretty amazing, right? So that's why I love this game, right? Because it's just math, right? And it's simple math. It's very quick addition, subtraction, and a little bit of division or multiplication, right? It's not crazy expensive math. So by buying something that maybe someone else didn't see the potential in, or maybe they were mismanaging it, and they had the 42 unit I'm buying in Tennessee has massive expenses. It doesn't have to have those expenses. They're spending money on things they shouldn't be spending money on, and they're also classifying it wrong. They're putting capex or capital expenditures. They're putting in new floors, new roofs, new windows. They're putting that in their expense ratios, and so I'm able to take advantage of that and say, okay, hey, your expense ratios are X, cap rate in the area is Y. Here's what I can pay for the house or pay for the building. And they're like, oh, okay. And then when I go to my lenders, I'm saying, oh, hey, look at these expenses, but look what they're spending the money on. And they say, oh, that's a one-time expense. I'm like, yes, it sure is. And they back it out and they give me the extra income. So now I'm buying a property that's just been renovated that doesn't really need a whole lot more, and I get to do it at a discount to the rate. So for me, understanding those couple of things, the cap rate and the NOI, are really, really important things for an investor to understand. And they work really great in multifamily, but they can also work for single family as well. Rules of thumb. So Peter mentioned it earlier, the 1% rule. So if you've got a $300,000 building, you want it to rent for $3,000 a month. It's not always attainable in this market. And if you're in the Pacific Northwest, I regularly see people come in and they're excited about a 0.5% rule place, right? They're excited because they can put 25% down and it will break even. And to me, that doesn't make me excited, right? And I have a tough time with that because that's their model, and that's okay, right? If that's your model, you just want to break even and depend on appreciation to make money, that's okay, right? That's a philosophy. It's just not my philosophy. I want to make money on the deal and make appreciation through time. So cap rates in a heavily appreciating marketplace like ours, you could expect 4 to 5% cap rate. In markets where they're more flat, 7, 8, 9%, right? Peter's mentioned he would sell at 8. So if you can buy at 12 and sell at 8, you're a super happy camper, right? There's extra value, especially if you can create extra value in the middle by adding pads or renovating and increasing rents, or even just decreasing expenses. All right, so ways to fund. There's a number of different ways you can do this. Peter alluded to this as well with partnerships, but if you've got a big pile of cash on hand, by all means, let's put that cash to work and get you some good returns. Home equity. Sometimes people will shy away from pulling money out of their primary residence to go invest in real estate. My thought behind that is that money is coming out of one of your pockets, right? It either comes from your stock market pocket, your cash pocket, your home equity pocket, or your mom and dad pocket, right? So one way or the other, this money is in your possession. If it's tied up in your house, it's not really doing a lot for you. Some people tend to think that that's security, having a lot of equity in your home. Well, it is and it isn't. What we saw last time the market crashed, if you had 100% financing on your property, and the market went down in value 30% on your real estate, who lost money?
Banks.
The bank lost money. That's exactly right. If you had a 50% loan to value, you had $1 million place and you had a $500,000 loan, and the property went down by 30%, who lost money then?
Both.
You did. The bank didn't lose any money. They got a $500,000 loan on a $700,000 property. They're okay.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Right? You lost all your money, right? Or you lost all that $300,000. So if you think the market's going to go up, take home equity out and it'll be replaced with the increase in value. If you think the market's going to go down, take the money out and put it into something else while you've got the chance, because if it's going to go down, it's going to go down, right? But we saw in the 2008 to 2018 kind of span, we saw home prices peak, we saw them valley, and we saw them peak again. And if you had held on through that window of time, you did just fine, especially if it was an income-producing rental property. One other great way to do this too, and I like to do this a lot now, is selling a home to level up. And you can do that two different ways. One would be selling a rental to buy a bigger rental. I'm doing a fair amount of that. But another great way to do that is, let's say you've got a house that you've been in for 10 years and it's really gone up in value. You've got a mountain of equity in it, but maybe it's not quite everything you were looking for in a home. And you're ready to add on that third bay garage or that fourth bedroom for the kids or whatever is deficient in your house right now. Look at that next level house up and see what it would cost to buy that house. And think about selling your place, taking the funds, and then putting minimum down on the new place, and then you got a big pile of cash to go put to work. I have helped a number of people do this, and yes, you take a bigger mortgage on your new house, but if you take those funds and then sprinkle them around in different real estate markets, you've also got income to offset it. I had one guy, specific example. He was coming from the Midwest, big Dave Ramsey follower, and I think Dave Ramsey is great for about 80% of people out there. But there's 20% of us that are really good savers and don't need that really strict model of finance, and you can take a little more risk. And this guy was in that boat, right? Great savings, great 401k, great income, just super solid buyer. He wanted to put $450,000 down and take a tiny little mortgage and pay it off in 15 years, right? Take the smallest mortgage he could, pay it off as fast as he could. And that was one philosophy. And so I got on my spreadsheets and I worked some numbers and I showed him, yes, you could totally do that. And here's what it would look like in 15 years. Or you could follow my plan, put 20% down, no mortgage insurance, nice level payment on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, take the rest of those funds, put them into 3 or 4 fourplexes. He ended up buying 3 fourplexes and a duplex. And the money from the income from those properties will pay your 30-year fixed mortgage. So instead of having one property that you've got a $3,000 payment on, he had 5 or 4 properties that he actually made $500 a month on. So even though he didn't follow that Dave Ramsey, pay it all off fast as possible, he now gets to live for free. And so I love that type of philosophy where you sell, extract all that big equity, and then go put it to work. If you don't have any of the top 3, right? You don't have a home with a bunch of equity. You don't have a line of credit. You don't have cash. Partnership's great. Peter and I run into people all the time that have a ton of gumption, lots of knowledge, and want to get out there and do it. They just don't have any funds. Similarly, if you're the guy with the funds and no time and no inclination to get out there, but you'd like to be involved in real estate, you can partner with somebody that can do that. And then flip to acquire. That's, again, one of my most favorite ways because that's how I got started. When I was in 2008, when the market had crashed and we weren't closing a lot of loans, I started to flip to pay the bills. And then the market started coming back and I was still flipping. So then my flipping revenues were just go straight into my war chest for buying rental properties. So if you don't have a big nest egg, but you've got some, buying a flip could be a great way to build up that nest egg or build up that war chest to be able to go out and find new properties. All right. So $100,000 in cash out of your primary residence at a rate of around 4% costs you about $500 a month. I like to make sure that people understand that is the cost. Generally speaking, that $100,000 going into multifamily is going to buy you a $400,000 building. And if you can follow back to Peter's example earlier, if you could buy a $400,000 fourplex and hit the 1% rule, that'd bring in $4,000 a month in income. After everything, mortgage, expenses, all the other stuff, that should probably net you around $1,000 to maybe $1,300 per month. So if you could take something that costs you $5 and make $13, I'd ask, how many times can I do that, right? And if you do that enough, you can pay your mortgage. All right, so guidelines, this is where sometimes where people get hung up, and this is where the rubber meets the road. Like Peter mentioned, I'm a lender. We're ranked in the top 200 teams in the nation for loan volume. We work a lot with investors, both nationally and state level. And so I like to share some of these things that can be hiccups for people along the way. Well, that might be tough to see. Okay, there it is. So investment properties do take a little bit more money down. You need to have at least a 620 credit score to be able to do that. Minimum down is 15%. So you'll see there the LTV, which is loan to value, is 85%. That 85% is not usually what we end up doing. Usually we do 20% down. And the reason why is the mortgage insurance and the interest rate hit at 85 is oftentimes not worth it. So generally speaking, plan on 20% down for a single unit property. And then on the lower level there, you see 2 through 4 units is 75%. So you need 25% down with 2 through 4, and you need 20% down for a single family. Thing that I like to utilize too is, again, rules of thumb or multipliers. If you have to put 20% down, that means you can have a 5 times multiplier with your money. So if you've got $100,000 to work with, you could buy a $500,000 building or single family residence, and put 20% down. That'd be $100,000. That same $100,000 only goes as high as a $400,000 duplex, triplex, or fourplex because you need 5% more down. So that $100,000 would buy a $400,000 place. So that's a 4 times multiplier. So if you like multifamily, you want to figure on a 4 times multiplier. If you're a single family investor, that's a 5 times multiplier. Okay. Refinancing a loan that's already in place. So one of the big things that we talk about is the different types of refinancing that you can do as an investor. The slide is called rate and term. And that basically just means that a rate and term refinance is you're replacing an existing mortgage. You're not getting any extra cash out. There are no seasoning requirements from the purchase. So that's a really key piece because investors like to keep their money rolling as fast as possible. There's no seasoning at all on that type of transaction. The entity does need to remain the same. So for those of you that would like to use an LLC, generally speaking, that happens after everything is all said and done. So if you're going to buy a property, fix it up, and then refinance it, all that's going to be in your personal name. And then after you're all said and done, you can move it into your LLC if you like. Loan to value limits are based on ARV. And so that is after repair value. We're not going to order the appraisal until after you say so and say, hey, Cody, the work's already been done. I'm ready to get the appraisal done. Then they go out and they see it in its bright, shiny shape, not what it was before. It's helpful to have receipts on hand for the appraiser to show what you've done to be able to support that value increase because they're going to see that prior sale. You buy a property for $400,000, put $100,000 into it, and you want it to be worth $600,000. You're going to need to make sure that you see, hey, here's all the things that we did and the money we spent on it, and then they can justify that. If it looks like it's just a lipstick flip and you just went in there and cleaned it, maybe put some carpet down, you're not going to see the kind of raises in value that you might think you deserve until you get to a 6-month mark. Okay. All right. So, cash out refinance. This is a different animal. Sorry, go ahead.
Keep going, sorry.
Okay, cool. So a cash out I think this is a different one. So this is delayed financing. Oh, there we go. Cash out refinance. This does offer, it has a 5% reduction in loan to value. So you'll see that 75% loan to value for a single and 70% for 2 through 4. This means that we're taking extra value, extra cash on hand beyond what we paid for the property, beyond what we put into the renovation based on the ARV or based on the after repair value. This requires a 6-month wait. So that's for Fannie and Freddie. There might be private money lenders out there or local banks sometimes that would have less waiting time, but usually they have smaller loan to values as well. So it ends up being the best case to wait that 6 months. So what that might mean though is you're in some sort of temporary funds for that window of time. So plan ahead. If you think that you're going to really hit a home run and have a ton of extra equity in the property, make sure that you take the financing that is going to allow you to wait that 6 months or plan for the expense of what that's going to be like. There's no limit to the amount of dollars you can get back out on that other than the loan to value. So if you bought a place for $100,000 and it's worth $1 million, you can go all the way up to that top level, 70% for 2 through 4. So there's no limiting factor on that. Well, like there is with the rate and term refinance, where it's limited to just paying off the existing loan. All right, go ahead, Peter. So delayed financing, that's kind of a middle ground between those two. And delayed is specifically for if you pay cash for a property. Okay, so if that's not you, then you can zone out for a minute. But if you have the cash or the equity in your house or a partner that's going to allow you to just pay cash for a property, these are the guidelines for what it looks like to come back and refinance that later. There is no seasoning requirement, but you are limited to the original purchase price plus transactional costs. So you cannot get your fix up out of this. So what we see regularly on this is if you got something that is a really great deal that just needs a moderate amount of fix up and you don't mind leaving that in the property, this can be a really great way to do that. I did this with one where I bought it. I got a 100% financing on the purchase, but I didn't roll the financing of the repairs in because I knew it wouldn't be there, right? And so that's the other trick is you have to understand what your ARV is going to be or your after repair value, because what the appraisal comes in at is going to be your maximum top line number. And then if it's 75 or 70% below that, that's your maximum loan number. So I did the math and I knew where it would appraise, and it would not have appraised enough to be able to give me my repair funds back. So I just paid for those in cash, and then I finished out the transaction, paid off the loan, paid off my closing costs, and didn't have to bring any extra money in. So that's a great way to go too if you have those extra cash.
Hey, Cody, 1 second, okay? Let me just
yeah.
There's actually been a couple people who've joined this. Let me share the screen.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Hold on. Desktop. No, hold on. I don't know which of these they are. Whoops. Let me do this again. Share screen. Desktop. System preferences. Zoom. Oh. Okay. Shoot. Well, we're going to move on. And I am recording this. And so just keep that in mind. I will send it to everybody at the end. So we're here.
Cool. All right. So we touched on this briefly earlier. That's LLCs. Just to give my personal opinion and or how I operate my business, I don't actually have my 1 through 4 unit properties in LLCs. I do my commercial buildings in LLCs, so anything 5 units and above, they're in LLCs because the financing on that type of loan allows for it. The financing for 1 through 4 unit properties using Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, they don't allow you to buy in an LLC or move around financing inside of an LLC. So again, what I do is I put all my commercial stuff in LLCs, and then my 1 through 4 unit properties I own in my personal name, and I carry a big umbrella policy as my insurance against any sort of issue that an LLC would protect me against. If you'd like to move your 1 through 4 properties into an LLC, you have to be mindful of the guidance, and you have to make sure it is a Fannie Mae loan. Freddie Mac gives clear guidance. They will not allow it, and they will call the note due. Freddie Mac allows it as long as you remain the majority shareholder in the LLC. So you want to keep the entities the same. If you and your spouse buy a property, we want to move that into an LLC that is owned by you and your spouse. If you and I buy a property that we want to move into an LLC, we can't move that into an LLC that just you own, because that constitutes a change of ownership, and that could be an issue for a lot of different ways, a lot of different issues. So that said, if you want to have an LLC, go ahead and set it up. But I see so many times people stop in their tracks buying real estate because they're waiting to get their legal team all set up, right? And that, to me, that's not the right way to go. I would say take a step forward, buy a piece of property. We can get an LLC later. You may choose not to put an LLC. You may choose just to get an umbrella policy. $1 million umbrella policy is probably $200 a year, right? Very inexpensive. We do have a portfolio lending program that will allow you to buy in an LLC, but it's quite a bit more expensive, and it's a lot more like a commercial loan. The property has to sustain itself. There's a prepayment penalty, and the rate is fairly expensive. I would say it's about 2% above what you would pay for a standard 30-year fixed Fannie Mae loan. So be mindful of that. If you have to own in an LLC, we can talk more about it. But generally speaking, what I'd say is buy as a person and then move it to an LLC after. Okay, so this is just talking about the transfer guidelines. So now you'll have that in the recording so you can reference back. That said, again, at the bottom line there, you'll see Freddie Mac does not allow it. Okay, rates of return. I like to figure these a couple different ways. We've already kind of started with that cap rate earlier, but cash on cash, that's to me one of the best measures of is this a great investment or not, right? And so that's just taking the gross income minus your operating expenses minus your mortgage. So this is where we talk about financing, and this is divided by the cash in the deal. So how much money did you leave into the transaction after it's all said and done? So it doesn't have to do with the price, and it's not a cap rate expense. So it's or cap rate measure. So it is taking into consideration mortgage. So this is bottom line, everything you take out of the income, how much money is left over, and then what did you actually leave in the deal? And so if you execute a BRRRR 100%, right? 100%, it's a home run. You get all your money back. Any rate of return you're going to get is going to be infinite because you didn't leave any money into that deal. So if you left $100,000 in a deal and it made $100,000 a month or a year, then that's 100% rate of return. That's great. I think all of us would take that. I'm generally speaking, I'm targeting to have that be at least 15% cash on cash return. Peter, you got a number for you?
15% is pretty typical. A number for me, my number's a little bit higher only because I do a lot of various investments.
That's great. Cool. So the other thing that I think people sleep on is return on equity. So your cash on cash return when you buy a property is great to have a measure for that. But you also have to measure your return on equity. And so the very similar calculation, the main difference there though is when you figure your return, you have to divide by the equity in the property. And so the way I do that is I take a look at my current market value minus my selling costs and then minus my mortgage, and that's my equity, right? That's how much money I would get if I sold the property. So the reason for that is if you only figure your cash on cash, when you bought it, you did a great job, well done. But as the property goes up in value or as you create massive value in an acquisition, now your return on what you could strip out of it might go down. And so we coined the term called lazy equity. Right? The idea is that if you didn't put a bunch of money into a deal and it has a great rate of return, that's awesome. 15, 20%, whatever the number is. But if you created a couple $100,000 in equity in that property, you can see how that's going to change your calculation. Great example of that is maybe Peter's mobile home park, right? If you truly do create an extra $600,000 in equity in that property, you've got to figure that return on equity to see, am I still getting the rate of return that I thought I was getting when I made this cash deal? And kind of going back to the way earlier slides of, do I hold this or do I flip it, right? And you can create so much extra equity that you can strip that out and then go buy another one of those awesome cash on cash deals, then you have to do that, right? You have to really think about, yes, I made a great deal on this, but now my return on equity is so low that I think I can better it by making a move. Yeah. So examples here, we've got $350,000, 20% down, rents at $2,600 a month. That is a mortgage of about $1,800, other expense $700. That's a net rental income of $100 a month, right? This is your Pacific Northwest investment, and it's probably not even quite that good, right? Your $350,000 house would be hard to find. So here's your rates of return, though. The other thing that we like to figure is there's cash on cash return, but then there's other things that go into real estate returns as well. And so return with principal reduction, I love to figure that because of that $1,800 mortgage payment, some of that money is principal, right? And that principal money is your money. Now, you can't go buy groceries with it, right? Like, it's not money that's in your pocket, but it is your money. It's part of the total return. So if you add that in, then you're actually getting about a 10% rate of return. Then if you add in appreciation, which is, one of the main reasons why we all like to buy rental real estate, is at 4% appreciation on that $350,000 house, that's going to take your total return up to almost 20%. So you can see that's why somebody would buy a Pacific Northwest property that was break even. They're not just looking at just the cash on cash. They're looking at all three of those returns. So here we go. Lazy equity, right? So that's cash on cash return was good when we bought it. Measuring that equity helps determine if our equity is being lazy or if it's still giving us a good rate of return. So in Peter's case, he's creating a lot of extra value, but how he's doing it is by increasing the income, right? So maybe his return on equity is still pretty darn good, right? But if what happens over time is if your rents aren't going up, but your value is going up significantly, or your rents are going up a little bit, but your value is going up way more, that's where the equity starts to become lazy. It's one of my favorite things because it allows us to utilize the 1031 exchange and level up. And if I had a property that I was getting a 4% rate of return on, and it was let's say it was a $500,000 place, but I could sell that $500,000 place and buy a $1.5 million place with the same money. And if I'm expecting a 4% appreciation, I just tripled my return by going into a bigger property.
Yep.
Okay. So here's an example of 1031 exchange. I sold a place in Marysville and I bought, so here's what I did. I sold them the place in Marysville and I refinanced to get a little bit extra cash out to do it out of a 6-unit that I had in Auburn, and I bought a 37-unit building. The net cash flow on the Marysville place, this was a single family house. It was a good cash flow, but I had a fair amount of equity in it, so it really wasn't returning the rate of return I wanted. Plus, the other thing about when we buy real estate is depreciation. So we buy real estate for 3 main reasons, right? Cash flow, appreciation, and depreciation. And those appreciation and depreciation sometimes can be oftentimes are way more impactful than the cash flow even is. So the depreciable base on my Marysville property, basically what you do is you take what you paid for it times 70%. 30% for land value and 70% for building value. That's what the IRS will allow. You take that, you divide it over the IRS schedule for depreciation. That was $4,400 per year in depreciation. So the benefit of depreciation on your tax return is it's a non-cash expense that you get to write down your income. So basically what that means is, let's say I made, in this case, I made $10,000 a year in net cash flow. And maybe I did a little repairs and I paid for some management. I did this, I did that. And let's say I made $6,000. 4,400 of that $6,000 is not taxable because of depreciation. So I still got that $6,000 in my pocket, but I only had to pay tax on $1,550, right? As per that depreciation. So you can see how depreciation is super valuable. Moving that money to the Oklahoma City 37 unit, I increased my cash flow to $12,000. And the depreciable base went from 122 to almost just over $1 million. So then now my depreciation per year is at $37,000. So I went from being able to make $4,400 a month or a year tax free to making $37,000 a year tax free.
It's like a game.
It is
a game. It's just numbers.
It's a game of Monopoly in real life. Yep.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
All right. So what do we do next? Right. That's a big step. So building a team. Obviously, Peter's a real estate agent. I'm a lender. We would love to be a part of your team and utilize our knowledge to help you get where you want to go. A mentor can be great, right? I've found a couple of those through local real estate connections, local investor connections. I say study. Read a book or 12, right? Like there's tons of great resources out there. A lot of things that I've developed, I've got from reading these books along the way. Find a networking group, right? The Bigger Pockets, RHA. There's a bunch of different places that you can go to be a member in and get around people that are doing the same thing and like kind stuff. And then work with a realtor to develop your criteria, right? What are you looking for? Do you want to buy off-market properties? Do you want to buy turnkey properties? Do you want to buy and hold? Like what is your criteria, right? And it doesn't have to be just limited to one, right? Mobile home park, storage units, multifamily, single family. There's lots of different avenues to do this in. Maybe you have a great amount of cash and you don't want to be involved at all. then you could maybe join a syndication. You're still involved in real estate, but you're just getting a great return on your money. The real estate's the backer, so you don't have to worry about what the stock market does. You just got a more safe, secure investment. Go to events, right? Buy, hold investor type groups, meetups, bigger pockets. I put on RHA, that's the Rental Housing Authority. If you're going to plan on owning real estate in Seattle metro area or even anywhere in Washington, I think it would be super important to be a part of that group because they keep you updated on the laws and the changing climate for realtors or for lenders, or for landlords. Yeah. Here's my own personal book list. These are all the books I've read in the last 2 years. I mean, if I had to pick one that really turned the tide for me was the Long Distance. So Long Distance Investing is just a killer book. Helped me get right. It's a couple up from the bottom on the right hand side. Long Distance Real Estate Investing, David Green. Just a killer book and helped me get comfortable with being out of the area.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Let me get out of share screen. Okay. Well, thank you, Cody. That was
my pleasure.
That was a punch to the face.
That's how we like to do it.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of you guys have a lot of questions. Again, Cody and I are basically playing Monopoly. That's all we're doing. It's just the game of Monopoly is just a little bit more. There's just a little bit more details to it, but it pays so many dividends. Cody doesn't ever have to work. He's a crazy hard worker, but he doesn't have to work, right? And that's kind of where we all want to be. We want to get to the point where it's a different energy when we're working out of just enjoying work rather than, because Cody, you enjoy your work. I know that.
I do.
But then you don't necessarily have to. And so, and what's crazy is all of your 120 doors and whatnot, they're only gaining more, they're paying off more debt and they're gaining more value. So within 30 years, technically, if you did no refis or anything like that, cash out refis, right, you're essentially, your income will only go higher from here. You're giving yourself a raise every single year.
Well, and that's the thing. You can give yourself a raise with a small adjustment, right? If I said, hey, I've got 100 units, let's say, and I'm going to raise them all $5 a month. Is anybody going to move for $5 a month?
Right.
No. Right. But I just raised my income by $500 per month or $6,000 a year, like that.
Right. Okay. Well, let's again. We want to keep this somewhat short. Thank you again, Cody. That was really good. And again, we are here, guys, as just coaches, I would say. Because there's so much to this. Cody just gave a little snippet, but per deal, per every mortgage situation, there's so much to each and every deal. We're dealing with so much with this mobile home park. So many good things, but it all you just have to have that team around you. So I'm going to open up the Q&A, just one person at a time, please, and you guys can leave at any point from here on out. So that's
Hi, this is Jason. I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
So I have a dying question, literally. We all have families, and when we talk about wealth management, death tax is real. Stuff happens, and what is your advice on getting together with an attorney and putting together a trust? Should we do it before we start investing, or should we do it after our first investment? What are your thoughts?
So I have some thoughts. So what I didn't realize actually, and I don't know all the various trusts that are out there. For my trust, because I have a trust, you actually have to own 50% LTV. So you have to basically, through your trust, once it gets big enough, then you can start investing in real estate. That's technically tax-free because you could basically just keep recycling the money in there. But one thing I did realize is that you cannot have more than 50% LTV. So, Cody, you have any thoughts?
I didn't know that. That's good to know. I do not have a trust, but my thoughts around it is, as far as like the legal, like wills and, that sort of stuff. I think it's smart to get those things dialed in. I don't think it has to be through a trust though. And the way that real estate passes to your heirs is it's the most phenomenal way to pass wealth to a different generation than any other way. And that's because, the 1031 exchange people say swap till you drop, right? So you never want to sell a piece of real estate if you can help it. You want to swap. You want to do a 1031 exchange. And the reason being is if you don't receive the money, you're not going to be taxed on that sale. So if you don't get those funds in your hands, you're not going to have to pay the capital gains on it. And if you move it into a new property, now you've probably leveled up, right? You bought a more expensive property. Hopefully it's going to bring in more rental income. But then at the end, right, because none of us get out of here alive, we're all going to die. At the end, when you die and that real estate passes to your heirs, their cost basis steps up to the day that they inherit it. And so what that means is, let's say you bought a $50,000 property and it went up to $500,000, and then you did a 1031 exchange. You bought $1 million property. Okay, so on your deathbed, you're like, hey, Sally, I'm giving you this $1 million building when I die. Sally's like, great, I love it, thanks, Dad. You pass away, sorry, but now you're dead. Sally has the property. It's $1 million. If you were to have sold it before, you would have probably already paid off your mortgage. So there's no mortgage, right? It's down the road. There's your original cost basis is super duper low because you started with a $50,000 building. So you've got basically, and now you've depreciated it all the way down to zero. So your cost basis on that is zero. So if you're going to sell it, you're going to pay 10% for real estate commissions, taxes, excise tax, blah, 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 blah. You're going to get $900,000. And then the government's going to have their hand out for between 15 and 25% tax, depending on your income tax bracket. So let's say it's in the middle, it's 20% taxed. So you're going to pay $180,000 in tax, and she's going to get $720,000. So where I see people make that mistake is they try to sell properties and give the money to their heirs before they pass away. Now they've paid $180,000 worth of tax on that sale, and now they've given this money to this person, and maybe there's a gift tax, maybe there's a state tax, right? There's a lot of other things going into that play. If you pass that $1 million property to the heir, then they get it. Their receipt of it is today, and it's worth $1 million. Let's say they like, hey, I hate real estate. Dad was always over there fixing crap, and I don't want to deal anything with it at all. I just want the money, and I'm going to go put it in the stock market or do whatever else. That heir can sell that property, pay the same excise tax, commissions, blah, 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 and net $900,000, but their cost basis was $1 million. So they actually get to show $100,000 loss on that sale and pay no gains. So the dying question there is, don't sell. Pass your property to your heirs through the proper channels. I'm not an attorney, so meet with an attorney, but it doesn't have to be a trust. I think you could just do it through your will.
Great, thank you so much. And the last question is, for those of us that have a family, how would you recommend balancing investing, and how would you go about doing it if you have a young family?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll go first. I don't have a young family, so I don't know if I'm going to be the best to answer it. But I do work with a lot of investors, and it is a balance thing, because in order to get a great deal, you've got to evaluate a number of properties, right? And so if you've got a job and you've got kids and you've got school and you got work and you got all these other things that's happening, and don't forget your partner, your spouse, right? And you still got to find time to shave off to come to something like this and go to some meetups and read a book and then actually evaluate properties and then maybe go see them too, right? Like I'm buying a property in Nashville. I had to go there last weekend, and I left my girl at home, right? Like my girlfriend stayed at home. She didn't go. So we had a weekend apart because of real estate. So yeah, it's a balance. So like I tend to be an early morning guy, right? So I get up and I'm up probably an hour before she is on a weekend, maybe hour and a half. And so that's my time, right? I try to find time that I would otherwise be my time. And that works for me because I love real estate. I love, evaluating deals, and I love this kind of stuff. I get jacked up from talking to people about it. So, this is me time, right? Even though I'm here talking to you guys, this is me time. I love this kind of stuff.
And let me just add, partnerships is my answer.
Yeah, true.
Partner with as many people as possible, leverage other people's times, their knowledge and whatnot, and but then again, you're also going to have to they come up with more money, or find friends with money, or go learn real estate during your downtimes, the 10-20 minutes that you have at night, whatever it is. It's going to be tough, but just making that 10 to 20 minutes of time to learn, and then being able to utilize your knowledge to be able to be involved in real estate.
Cool, thank you.
Anyone?
Hi, Pierre and Cody, and this is Jay. Hi, everyone.
Hey, Jay.
Again, thank you for your time and doing this great presentation. Really appreciate it. So I'm a newbie in real estate investment, and I bought a small condominium last winter. And Peter and John team helped me through this and all the fears, and I had tons of questions, and they always there to answer my questions. And Peter kept, every time I'm going through all this difficulties and questions, and Peter kept showing on my dream, and like, I mean, while I'm through digesting all the information, but even my wife never showed my dream. So, but anyway, my question is, due to COVID-19, we've seen lots of big conferences cancel, and hotels and less customers, and short-term rental like Airbnb will suffer, mostly in Vegas, and enterprises and layoff, unable to pay, and those people who've been laid off, and they're not going to be able to pay the rents. Like tenant-friendly state like Washington State here, with the new winter rent being passed. So, as Peter described a few days ago in a video, in demand-supply graph, and sellers are willing to sell cheaper. So that means, we can buy property at a lower price, but that doesn't mean the problem will go away. Eventually, everything will eventually need to be corrected, and real estate isn't an exception here. So how would you recommend and suggest and prepare for us approach a different way, build a portfolio in REI in this situation?
Ooh, I definitely have some things to say about that, Cody. I mean, I'm sure you do as well. Yeah, I can certainly go first. So no one knows what's going to be happening with COVID-19, and do I believe it's going to get worse? I do. I really do. I believe there's going to be a lot more people who end up getting affected by it. They, like I said in the beginning, I don't know if any of you guys heard it, but I know some people. I know people who are kind of higher into kind of the CDC level, and they estimate about 1.5 million people in the U.S. I believe in the U.S. Maybe it's worldwide. Doesn't matter. Actually dying from COVID-19. So. There could definitely. So what will happen? So again, so not everyone has watched the video, Jay. So basically, if you look at supply and demand, if demand decreases because fear or job loss or whatever the reason is, if the demand decreases, then supply will increase. So if demand decreases, supply increases, prices will decrease, right? And so that could be one of the factors that happen. My personal suggestion in this kind of market is, it's the same thing with any kind of market shift or any kind of market crash, is to first of all make sure that there is a stable job market wherever it is, that there will always be jobs with a decent median income level. I'm actually looking in various areas. I'm looking at mobile home parks in Florida, in Ohio, in what all these other ones, and I'm looking at all the statistics there. What's the median household income? Where are the jobs coming from? What's the crime rate? And I really want to get those insulated areas like Seattle, because as bad as Seattle gets, I believe there will always be jobs and people able to pay. And my personal opinion is go buy investment properties that are kind of on the mid to lower end. Don't buy high-end properties and try to rent those out. Try to get those things that are $1,000 a month, $1,500 a month, in rents, because people will be able to afford those rents even at minimum wage. I mean, someone can do $1,000, right? So that's just my suggestion.
Like Class B categories.
Class B, maybe Class C, right? Whatever types of investments that have lower incomes, more doors, lower incomes, and knowing that there will always be people to rent.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Yeah, I got a little to add. I would say one is I'm stockpiling cash right now, right? Like put as much money in the bank as you can to be ready to take advantage of lower prices. And this will have an impact on us, and it could slide us into a recession. One thing that I would say is that even through recessions, real estate markets tend to do fairly well. Not always. Like there was one big one that we all remember so well, right? That really hurt us. And I'm going to see if I can grab my screen share here real quick. Yeah. You guys see that? That's a housing recessions. So this is a graph that goes back 50 years of appreciation, and the red line in the middle is 5%, and the squiggly line is the actual Case-Shiller index on house prices, right? And so you see it's kind of relatively along the line throughout the beginning years, and then it dips down. We have not as good of appreciation, and then we spike up, right? We go way above the line, and then we drop down. That's the big crash that we've all been talking about, right? 2006-07 was the peak, and 2011 or so was the bottom, and then now we're kind of back online. And if you forecast this out this is from 17, so you go a couple more years out, we're probably back above that line. But the key thing there is if you look at the gray bars, the up and down gray bars, those are the recessions that we've had since the 70s, right? And so if you look at the little squiggly line inside of the gray bar, which is a little hard to see, but you can see what happened to real estate on the far left one. What happened to real estate in that window of time, right? It's relatively flat, right?
Right.
The next time, small recession, but also relatively flat. The next one, relatively flat, maybe went down a little bit. And the little skinny one kind of in the middle looks like real estate dipped a little bit during that window of time. Then in the 2000 recession, that was a dot-com bubble, right? That's right when I got in mortgage. Real estate actually did pretty well in that one. And then you see the last one. That's the big one that we all think of when we think recession, housing prices are going to go down. Well, that recession was caused by housing, right?
Right.
Irresponsible lending practices, loans that should have never been issued, Wall Street greed that pushed things way over the top, right? Should have never got where we got to. So when you look at that, you think, if we do have a recession coming, what's going to happen? Well, chances are good that I think real estate's going to hold that line. If it doesn't, and it does dip, that'll be a great opportunity for us. And then we see is in the end, things come back, right? The market will settle back into this 5% appreciation number. And I always use 4 on my estimates because I like to be a little conservative. So I'd say hoard cash, right? Build up reserves so that you can take less in rent too. So if you already, like I have a pretty good sized rental portfolio, I may have to discount my rents, right? To keep those units full. And so we're already starting to see that a little bit. Like I've got some vacancy in Des Moines. I've got some vacancy in Linwood where I'm not able to get the rents I thought that I would get. And so rather than stay vacant, I'm lowering the rent or offering a move-in special to get a body in, get a body in there. Because if we do hit to a recession, people are going to kind of stay put, right? Or like Peter mentioned, is buy recession-proof-ish houses where it's $1,000 a month for a 2-bedroom place, right? That's workforce housing. That's housing that's going to stay pretty full. I love me some Grant Cardone, but that guy's buying luxury, and I think he's going to get hurt bad.
100%.
100%. Maybe but he's buying luxury now with OPM, right? So maybe he doesn't care, right? He's raising capital like mad because everybody wants to follow the Grant Cardone. But I think that sector is going to get crushed And if he keeps buying into the crush, and then the rising tides will lift his boats, then he'll do okay. But for a while, it's gonna be bloodbath. Like my mentors, the people that I'm looking at, they like workforce, they like B class, and high C class, low B class type areas that they can rent for, workforce type wages. Again, I'd say fill vacancies now, right? I've called all my property managers and said, get them full. Like, I don't care what you got to do, get them full. Half off the first month's rent, drop the rent $100 a month, whatever, get them full. I want these things full with good people, and then we'll weather the storm. And if we need to, if we need to take half a month's rent for a month or two while we're in COVID and people stay and they keep paying the bills, then I can survive, right? I can survive off of that. So if you can't survive off of 10 or 20% reduced income on your rentals, you should probably think about not buying a rental property yet, right? I have decent income. I can offset that as well. But, who knows? If we slide into recession, maybe the mortgage world won't be quite as good as it was before. So I'd say be prepared, and then be prepared to ride it out too, right? It could get ugly, just like the stock market, right? If you panicked and sold last week, and then you missed Friday. Friday was up 2,000 points, right? Like a full 10% increase. So if you panicked and sold on Thursday because things were bad, you just missed one of the biggest up days in the entire stock market history ever. So if you panic and sell because real estate comes down a bit, you'll lose. If you look at that graph again, you see if you just sold at the bottom and then bought again at the top, well, guess what? You're doing the opposite of what they always say in investing of buy low and sell high. You're panicked investors. Buy high and sell low. So don't be a panicked investor.
All right. Thank you, Cody.
You bet.
Jay, just real quick, two additions to that would be, well, first of all, Cody, what about interest rates, right?
Yeah. Well, that's a great one, right? So if you had been a buyer of real estate over the last couple of years and rates were higher, now you've got an awesome opportunity to refinance when things go bad, right? So rates are quite a bit lower than they were a year ago. On Monday there was like 4 hours where they were the lowest they've ever been. And then all of a sudden we lost that, right? It was gone. Rates probably rose at least 0.5% this week. And so we had an amazing opportunity. It was very short-lived, but any of our clients that feel like they missed it, I'm telling them, get ready, right? Get your application in, give me your paperwork, get ready so that we can push the button and pull the trigger, because we're not out of the woods, right? I mean, this COVID-19 thing is not going away anytime soon. Yeah. And that's really what pushed the market the way it was going. So I don't think that we're fully recovered, right? I don't think we got a really big stimulus package on Friday. And I think that's for sure what moved the markets. And I think it will be great, but I don't think it will be enough, right? There's going to be businesses that close. I was talking with my financial planner on Friday, and she was saying that there will be bailouts, right? There will be money that goes to airlines. There will be money that goes to hotels. There will be money that goes to Boeing, right? I mean, we do not lose Boeing. Boeing is a major employer. They're really our only airplane manufacturer, so you can't be a country of our size and not make airplanes, right? They just can't happen. So there's companies that will get bailouts, and then there's companies that won't, right? So you think back to that crash from 2008 when Lehman Brothers, a company that had been in business for 150 years, doesn't exist anymore, right? And then there's AIG. AIG was too big to fail. They had to fix it. They had to give them money so that they could stay alive. Otherwise, it would have been a systemic failure. The whole country would have come crumbling down if AIG would have failed. Right. So they understand that won't happen. And I don't know that we'll necessarily get to the same levels that we saw during 2008, but there will be some companies that don't make it through this. And unfortunately, probably the smaller the company, the less likely they are to make it through.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for the answer. Cody, this is Jesse. Thanks so much for the time. Peter, thank you for the invite. Maybe while we're on the existential threat conversation, I'll maybe ask one more, and then I have a follow-up that'll pivot more to general investing and some steps. But I noticed in your intro, or in part of what you covered, you talked about population growth. Mm-hmm. And I don't hear that talked about. So it just seems like you might have had some textured thoughts. It's something I follow with world trends, with population decline in Europe, with projected crest in the U.S. and then with pretty incredible growth projected for places like Africa. So I was just curious if you've thought about that as it relates to real estate. I'd be really interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we do look at that, and it's that's the next level. And I don't know that I have stats on that, so I'd love to sit down with you more on what you're looking at. We look at like population movement, I guess, more than actual growth of people. So like Seattle has had a great population increase because people are moving here from California because it's cheaper and there's tech jobs and they can have a better quality of life. People move to Texas from California for the same reason. The people move to Texas from Washington for cheaper cost of living. So what I'm looking for when I'm looking at real estate investing is I'm looking for population growth in an area and then like average wages, right? So if there's wage growth and population growth, then I feel like the rental market will be strong. But that's the next level. I'd love to talk more about actual population. I don't know. I guess I'm not sure how you would differentiate that, but like actual growth of the population of a country rather than it moving around being transient.
Yeah, well, thanks for the answer. It sounds like you're talking about micro within a country.
Yes.
City trends, which makes real estate's local, as people will say, so that makes a ton of sense. And if you want to dig into national, UN stats are a good place to dig into to start.
Okay, cool.
We could always chat about it more. Maybe to pivot then away from existential threats to the element of just team. So I'm thinking about like baby steps. How do you start somewhere and grow? And then what do you see as the key people of teams? So I've read Hold and Flip and have heard their opinions on some of that, but just curious, like what is your team as you go into deals? How do you think about that structure?
Yeah. I can go first. So for me, team-wise, I mean, obviously finance is a big key piece of that. And what I have a number of different commercial folks that I lean on. And then, of course, if I buy something that's small multifamily, duplex, triplex, I can take care of that myself. But having a great lender that understands investment real estate, I think is key. There's a ton of people out there that do what I do, but they just don't have the experience in working with investors and knowing those guidelines. And then, of course, realtor, right? Somebody that's investment focused that also invests as well so that they speak your language. They understand what you need to know, what you maybe don't know that you don't know, right? So that you can help train on those sorts of things. And then from a property perspective, PM, property manager in whatever area you're going to buy in is absolutely key because they're kind of going to be the point guard, right? Like they're going to run the whole show. I've got a great one in Nashville that just takes super great care of us. My Oklahoma City properties are not as good. And actually, I just have a call when I'm done with this to fire the gal that's running it right now and hire a new gal. So, you have to be mindful of that. And I don't want to say like my income is passive, but it's not passive, right? I have to devote time to managing the managers, right? I don't do the property management, but I have to keep an eye on them. I have to keep an eye on their reports. I have to push them a little bit if we have a vacancy that is lingering, right? So I think lender, realtor, property manager, and then dependent upon your level of interest of being involved, I lean on the PM to have the contractor and the handyman and the landscapers and all that sort of stuff in the different marketplaces. I don't really do much of that. And then of course CPA and attorney. I think those are kind of the like top 5 folks that I would have on your list before you have anything else.
I was wondering if you're going to drop those last 2. I was going, what about tax and legal? So
yeah,
those are huge.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would echo everything Cody says, and let me just speak. Everything Cody says is correct, and let me just speak on the realtors because I am in real estate. And what's funny is I'm actually on the other side where I'm talking to Spokane realtors, I'm talking to Ohio realtors, I'm also talking to Texas realtors as well. And I actually used a realtor for my Texas, the mobile home park, but I'm also talking about not having her involved on the next one because her focus was luxury residential. And for me, I was actually just talking to the seller directly and the seller's agent directly, but having a good real estate agent who understands real estate investments, that's a key because you don't want to find just a realtor. Most realtors, Cody, wouldn't you say like 90 to maybe 95% of realtors don't understand real estate investments. They just understand how to buy and sell a home. And so I would
Yes.
say a great real estate agent who understands multifamilies, even parts of financing,
Yep.
would be such a huge contributor to how well you invest, especially when you're investing out of state.
Yeah, well, what I find too is like I'll meet a realtor and they'll find out that I'm an investor and they're like, oh great, I'll send you some properties. I'm like, oh okay, and they set me up a search and then I get everything in, like, oh, this will make a great rental, and I'm like, why? Like, because it's cheap. I'm like, no, that's not why to make a great rental, right? Or they try to sell me some funky something or other. Like, Peter hits the nail on the head, right? That having a realtor that really understands investing, and I would ask them if they invest themselves, right? Like, I think that's really important, because if they don't, then I'd ask them why, right? And if they've got a reason why, cool. Doesn't mean they're not knowledgeable, right? Maybe they had a financial hardship, or maybe there's something that's come up, right? But if they're not investing or seeking to get back to investing, then I would probably continue to look. And what you don't want is just somebody that's going to conveyor belt properties to you as they come on the MLS, right? You've got to have somebody that's going to sift through them, sort them, try to locate some off-market deals, right? Like, it's well beyond just what's on the MLS.
Yeah. Right. Maybe one last team follow-up, and let some other people ask questions. But I noticed on your slide about team, you also had mentor in there.
Yeah.
I'd just love feedback from you and Peter on who do you think makes the best. If you were going to go pick a new mentor in real estate today, are you looking for a background across these 5 categories? Are you looking for someone that's been in a local market area? I'm just curious what your criteria are specific to who you take advice from.
Yeah, personally for me, it's somebody that's already where I want to be, right? So I look for somebody that's at 500 units, right? I look for somebody that is, like Peter mentioned, has retired out of their JOB with their passive income. And I've got a few people like that in my life. And what I want from them is knowledge and a push, right? Because if you, like, it's the 4-minute mile, right? Like Roger Bannister, it was impossible. No one's ever going to run a 4-minute mile. Yeah. And then Roger Bannister does it. And then what happens? 10 people do it a month later.
Yeah.
Right. So once those barriers are broken down and you can see how someone else has done it, then you can see yourself doing it. And so if I'm not hanging around with people that aren't a level or 2 above me, then I get comfortable where I'm at. Right. If I just hang around with my buddies from high school or college and, they're working their JOB, putting their money in their 401ks, and we sit around and have dinner or beers or whatever, and we're telling stories. Well, our stories aren't the same stories, right? They're not doing what I'm doing. Now, I love to sit down and have those conversations and get them excited about what I'm doing and maybe help them jump in. And that was my night last night, right? Playing some cards with some buddies, and the ones thinking about it, but the other guy, he jumped in, he bought 10 units last year. So now the 2 of us get to level up the guy that was kind of, wishy-washy about it. But if I talk with somebody and they're not interested about it, then we kind of stop talking about it, and then we just talk about random weird stuff, COVID-19, whatever. But I get some enjoyment out of that, but it's not anywhere close to helping somebody realize, hey, this is how I'm going to be financially free, and in half the time I thought I was going to be.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jesse. Hey, Jesse, I want to be mindful of everyone's time. We probably have like maybe 5-ish minutes left. And so I want to open it up for other questions, and I just want to say, please reach out to Cody. He's a mentor of mine. I mean, I ended up buying a property with him in a single family home in Texas, and so please feel free to reach out to me and get Cody's information, and maybe I'm just putting your business out there, but hey, I think Cody's a great mentor. So
yeah, no, I'd certainly love to help anybody, right? I mean, obviously, mortgage is how we put food on the table, and love investing in real estate, but I even more so, I love giving back and helping people get where they want to go.
Genuinely. Anyone else, guys? Rapid fire questions. Oh, maybe we're done.
I do have a question.
Okay.
So for a first investment property, do you recommend that we do something local or look out of state?
Ooh, there's I personally believe in local. That's a really hard one. I believe in both because local, because if you read this book, I have this book right here. This is a great book. I would recommend reading it. And I'm assuming you're not flipping homes. I'm assuming it's a buy and hold, but they say to be within 30 to 50 miles of your investment because there are things that do happen. Now I do believe if you have the right team out there, like I'm investing in Texas right now. I have about 55 doors in Texas. And the reason why I'm able to do that is because I'm able to leverage a good friend out there. And I also, Cody, like you said, property manager. I also have contractors and I have a realtors out there. And so if you have the solid team, the difference between here, which is about a 4 to 5% cap rate, and there is quite significant because in other states it's going to be 8+%. In Texas, I've been finding 10+% cap rate deals, and so it's just if you're ready, yes, over there. If not, invest.
Thank you. Also, one follow-up question. Cody was showing this NOI-based valuation approach for properties. What I'm confused is for 1 to 4 unit investment properties, is it based on NOIs or based on comps?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is more comp. So an appraiser is going to look at comparable sales in the area rather than like a commercial appraisal, 5 units and above is really going to look at cash flow and cap rates. So that said, the higher rents you get, it will impact the appraiser's opinion of the property and which other properties he can use as comparables. But it's not a one-to-one, not a simple calculation from like it is with commercial.
Got it.
Anyone else before I put my last closing statement out there? Okay. So the last thing I'll say, again, Cody, thank you so much for your time. And again, we are available to be able to help. I mean, I'm very passionate about this. It's almost to the point where this is kind of what I want to do full time. Is really just to help people with investments. Whether I'm whether I have any financial incentives or not. I just really believe in this as it's days like today where I see the stock market fluctuating so much that I really do want to push people into investments. And the other thing I will say is that, like I said, I also believe in economies of scale. And so we are looking at, you see all the people in here and, we kind of have all these like potential partners. And, just keep in mind that we could be buying a mobile home park. Like I'm looking at a $4 million mobile home park right now that is doing a 10% cap rate. That has a potential for 10, 15 more pads actually at about 500 per pad. And so those are really great investments that, I personally won't be able to buy a $4 to $5 million house myself, but I could also bring Cody, I could bring Jay, I could bring Jason, all of us, and using economies of scale, we have this amazing investment property in which we're all getting great cash on cash returns, and we're adding value to it. And I was actually gonna mention that should you invest in this kind of market, when do you time, whatever it is, just buy at a discount, buy at a 50% discount. And you won't have a timing issue, right? So if we're able to buy these incredible real estate deals together, then we'll be able to get some better deals. As long as you are a great partner to have, because that is important. We don't want to get into bed with bad partners. So, and I'm happy to share with you guys what I'm doing. And like I said, reach out to us. And we're always available to be able to talk about various deals. For those of you guys who want to take baby steps, maybe you guys can invest, I don't know, $5,000, and maybe we could buy like a flip together, and you guys can see how that plays out. Like I'm even open to that because I'm just about to close on a flip. I just put my home on a market in Bothell, and I'm already getting a ton of calls. I'm going to be making 70% cash on cash return on that, just like this. And so I'm happy to share that with you guys so you guys can see what that looks like. So That's all, guys. Let me know
Nice.
if you have questions. But that's the end. Thank you for joining.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. You bet. Nice to meet you guys.
All right, guys.
Thanks, Cody.
Signing out.
Take care.